we are back again. Now, just before we proceed, again, I always forget to basically do this. So I will create and validate the model of registering user. Like that. Let's click push, which is great. Cool. Now, as I've said in the previous session, we have to move on and separating the logic of communicating with the API into another project. And the reason why is we want to reuse this in multiple places. We want to reduce the amount of use this code every time. Like there is no need to type those every time, because this is too much repeated basically across the application, especially if you have a big one. And the other reason is if you have unit testing. So basically, if we create that abstraction and then those forms or any place across the system where you are communicating with the API, right now your logic like this one is not like, it's just saying, for example, authentication service.login. So what does that mean? This means you are dealing with an abstraction, you are dealing with an interface. You can create a fake implementation that writes, for example, to the console or just does nothing. So this helps improving the testing of your application. And also you can create offline and online support much easier than we'd expect. This is going to be implemented in .NET MAUI, not in this course, but we will take advantage of reducing the code and maintaining from one place. So let's create a new project here. I'll right click on new project. So why we are not putting this into shared? So, okay, maybe this is gonna be a good question. And the reason why is try always to follow the separation as much as you can. So if from another application, you just need the models and their validators, but you don't need the code of this logic. So why to put that, to give also the code of communicating with the API while if it's, for example, not needed. So we can simply separate them. You know, those projects are for free and we can create as many as we want. So maintaining is easier, less code and less size. So yeah, I prefer to create many applications actually. So let's type PlannerApp.client.services. I'm gonna call it like this. You can call this one a PlannerApp.client.shared. So everything shared across the clients if they are multiple, more than Blazor or WebAssembly. But this one could also be shared across the server. In this case, as I've said, because the API is in another place, it's already hosted, it's not available directly in this project. This is why it's not there. But if you are having your API over here, you can directly share this with the server as well. So it's not for a client only. This is why I've called this client.services, because this is specifically only for the clients, for Blazor, for UWP, for WPF, for .NET MAUI, for Xamarin, whatever it is. This is great. I will remove this one from here, like the default one. That's cool. Now, let's create a folder called interfaces. And over here, I will create the first interface that we have, which is authentication service. Authentication service. That's right. Let's click. Now let's turn this one into an interface. Cool. And let's add the project reference. Let's add the shared so we have access for all the models, which is great. So authentication will have two things: login and register. So we have already login, so let's migrate it to this one over here. Or, yeah, sorry, let's start first with the register, and then we can move to login. So what register, if I go to the API, returns to me, as you can see, it returns nothing, just an object of API response that has a message and its success, nothing more. Because, yeah, when you register, you don't expect anything. Either it's registered successfully or no, so no data to receive. So it's going to return API response. And let's say API response. That's good. And call it register user async. And it takes register request, right? This is the model that we have created in the previous session, which is good. Now let's call a model and this add here. So to do migrate login to here as well, to authentication service. Okay, so we will migrate the login to this one later on. That's great. So as you can see, as I've said, right now you can create a fake implementation that does nothing. We can create one that calls to an SQLite database. So integrate this locally on the machine if you are building an Electron app or .NET MAUI app. So having this way of letting the application or the form deal with this one, having a lot of benefits comparing to writing or putting the HTTP client directly into the forms or the code. So this is great. Now you will ask me, okay, this is in case of success. What's in case of failure, like bad request? Okay, that's a good question. Whenever we have this one, we need this response actually, which is an API error response that has the message and the errors, what we need, but this one is not going to be returned, it's going to be thrown as an exception. So over here, I will create a folder, I will call it exceptions, and I will add class, and I will call this one API exception. So this is a custom exception that we are going to create, public, and it should inherit from exception. Oh no, what we have done. Exception. Sorry for that, F12. Yeah, sorry, we are already on the exception page, good. Okay, so this is an API exception, but we will add a property called public API error response. API error response. So you can see I have right now a custom exception that I can throw and I can add this error to it. So then I can have access to it from the catch statement on the client, or from within the try catch syntax or statement, sorry. So we can catch this exception and then we can have this API error response. So I'm gonna send it over here, API error response, error, API error response equals error. And maybe we are interested in other kind of data. So let's take the HTTP status code in case it's 400, 404, and so on. So let's take HTTP status code. Come on. I typed F1 by mistake. Sorry for that. Cool. Status code, and I will create another constructor that has only API error response, and this one, sorry, let's remove this. So this constructor just add, and in this case we are going to call this constructor. Okay, cool. And you know, each exception has a message. Okay, we don't need it to send the message to the top. And so simply, yeah, right now we have this custom exception. So you're going to see how we will use it. So this is dealing with exceptions in a good way is something very important. So this is an interfaces folder. This is the exceptions. I'm gonna put the services outside. So let's create the implementation of the register service. I'll right click, add, and I will call this one HTTP authentication service. Great. Now public HTTP authentication. Good. Let's implement this interface. That's great. And here we have to inject an instance of HTTP client. So let's type HTTP client. Cool. So this implementation, as we have said, are going to communicate with our API. That's cool. So let's add async over here. And let's type var response equals await client.post async. But I'm not going to use post async. I'll use post as JSON async. System.net.http.json. Let's import that. That's cool. So now we can add the URL v2/auth/register, and then we can pass the model over here as it is. If you go back to make sure that this is the right URL, yeah, that's the right URL. So now in case of success, So here, the same thing that always gonna happen, which is an API error response. So let's deal with that. Var error response equals await response dot content dot read from JSON async, which is API error response. Great. Always. This is how the API deals. And so now, because it's an error, so I'm going to throw an exception, new API exception. And I will take the error response in the constructor. I can pad the status code in case I'm interested, but okay, let's do it. So now, in my client, I can catch the API exception, and then I can make sure that this error is not related to the internet connection. It's not related to anything. This is related to an error thrown by the API. So it's very easy for me to show a message or to show whatever you want. You will see this in a bit. Now, in case of the success, basically this one has nothing, just a message. So response.content.read from JSON, and the object is API response. It's a pure API response. Nothing else, and type return result. So all the functions of my HTTP client gonna be here, as I've said. So they are now 100% separated from the logic of the API. I can create fake implementations for testing. I can do whatever I want. So this is great. Now we will migrate login, but let's now continue with register, and then we are going to come back. I'm trying to show you as many scenarios as I can, so you can understand things like somehow deeply, and you know the reason why we are doing this. So it's not only about explaining. I'm trying to show you the difference between here, and you will see the difference between also seeing this in action right now. You will notice how much the register page is gonna be cleaner and more readable and more testable of this. Then we can migrate the login form to this new implementation. So this is everything for this session. Thank you so much for watching. In the next one, we will create the form of the register and call this function from here. So see you in the next one.